Ever started talking, and just as things are getting good, bam, someone bulldozes right through your sentence like it was a speed bump on their highway? It's like 1 minute you're laying out your thoughts, maybe finally speaking up in a group or sharing something important, and the next, they cut in with, well, here's what I think, and off they go, dragging the whole conversation with them. And there you are, lips still parted, thoughts still halfway out, wondering if it's even worth finishing. And let's be honest, it doesn't matter whether it's at work, around friends, during family dinners, or in meetings. That feeling, that little drop in your gut, hits the same every time. Suddenly, the other person owns the room. They've taken the wheel, and you're left somewhere in the back seat without directions. It's not just annoying, it quietly chips away at confidence. Because if people keep talking over someone again and again, it starts to sound like a message. What you're saying doesn't matter as much. But here's the real question. What happens next? Because there's usually a fork in the road at that point. Either people stop talking altogether, fold into themselves a little bit, or try to yank the spotlight back. And that second option, that can go south fast. See, the first instinct is often to fight fire with fire. Someone cuts in and suddenly it's, oh, excuse me, am I interrupting your interruption? Or worse, the volume goes up, the pace quickens, and it becomes a power match. Who can speak louder? Who can dominate more? And on the outside, it might look like taking charge, but underneath, it often comes across as desperate, like someone scrambling to prove their presence, to claw their way back into relevance. But here's the thing no one tells you. Interruptions aren't always about volume. They're about presence. And when someone's presence feels shaky, they try to inflate it by talking over others. It's not strength, it's noise. And responding with more noise only adds fuel. Suddenly, what was once a conversation becomes a tug of war, not of ideas, but of egos. That's not communication, that's chaos. And deep down, it never feels right. It doesn't feel earned, it feels exhausting. Like every sentence has to punch its way through the crowd, but real influence doesn't shout. It doesn't lunge. It stands firm. It speaks with weight, not just volume. And people can feel the difference. They may not name it, but they feel it in their gut. The quieter confidence draws attention in. The louder desperation pushes it away, so instead of lunging for space, hold it. Let presence do what volume never could. Let stillness be the megaphone. Because the loudest voice in the room isn't always the one that's heard. It's the one people choose to listen to. And here's where it really backfires. The louder someone gets in an attempt to take back control, the more it highlights the fact that they lost it in the first place. It's like waving a flag that says, I'm no longer steering this conversation, but I'm trying really hard to. That imbalance is obvious. People pick up on that energy shift. The calm, the collected. Those are the ones who hold space. The ones chasing it, they usually just push others further away. But that doesn't mean the only option is staying quiet. There's a better way. A way that's not about raising the voice or playing verbal ping pong. It's about staying grounded, staying consistent, and creating a contrast so sharp that the interrupter ends up looking like the one out of place. It starts with something deceptively simple. Don't stop talking. Seriously, keep the same tone, same pace, same volume. When someone cuts in, the temptation is to freeze, to let them have it. But the stronger move, keep going like nothing happened. Let them interrupt. Let them talk over. But don't match their energy. Hold the same course, same rhythm, as if their interruption is just static on the radio. That steady delivery, it doesn't come across as ignoring. It reads as calm, confident, unshakable. And in any group setting, people notice. And it's subtle too. That kind of composure doesn't wave its hands or demand applause, but it grabs attention in the most unexpected way. People in the room begin to lean in. There's something magnetic about a voice that doesn't flinch. It's like watching someone walk through a storm without blinking. The contrast becomes obvious. While the interrupter is scrambling for airtime, the steady voice becomes the anchor. And in rooms full of noise, everyone gravitates toward the anchor. Because consistency signals strength. It tells people, this voice belongs here. This person isn't shaken. And it creates a ripple effect. Others start following that tempo. The room calms down. The focus shifts. Because in that stillness, something powerful is communicated without a single extra word. It says, I'm not afraid of being interrupted. I'm not fighting for space. I am the space. And once that energy settles into the conversation, it becomes very hard to ignore. Not because it demands to be heard, but because it deserves to be. Imagine this playing out in a meeting. Someone jumps in while another person's mid-sentence trying to redirect the discussion. But instead of backing down or raising their voice, the original speaker just continues. Same words, same tone, no pause, no panic. Meanwhile, the interrupters overhear, pitching their voice higher, trying to wedge into the conversation. That clash, it exposes something powerful. The grounded person looks in control, the interrupter looks like they're fighting for attention. And that's where the real power shift begins. Because in that moment, it's no longer about who's louder. It's about who's more centered, who's not bothered, who stays the course. And the rest of the room sees it. They hear it, they feel it. The attention, whether consciously or not, slides back to the one who held their ground. Now resisting the urge to raise the voice, that's the next piece. It's tempting, so tempting, to try and out-talk someone. Like hopping over their words with louder ones, hoping to win the volume war. But volume wars are exactly that, wars. Nobody walks away from those looking composed. They just end up as noise. Think of all those shouting matches on TV panels or debates that devolve into people yelling over each other. Nobody wins those. Viewers tune out, the message gets lost, and all that's left is ego in a boxing ring. And it happens fast. One person raises their voice, the other matches it, and suddenly it's not a conversation anymore. It's a volume contest in a room full of echoes. And the louder it gets, the less anyone actually hears. It's like everyone's speaking, but no one's listening. The worst part, it rarely ends with understanding. Most of the time, it just leaves both sides feeling drained, unheard, and oddly embarrassed afterward. And in public settings, it's even more noticeable. People cringe. They look away. No one wants to be part of a spectacle, because shouting doesn't just raise volume. It lowers credibility. Even if the point being made was solid, the delivery drowns it. It becomes forgettable. Not because of the words, but because of the chaos wrapped around them. And over time, people start associating that kind of energy with drama, not leadership. So instead of fighting to be the loudest, it's better to become the voice people want to listen to, the one that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Because when the voice stays calm while everything else escalates, it becomes the signal in the noise. And that's where real influence lives. So instead of rising with the noise, drop the rope. Let the other person escalate, but stay rooted. Speak like there's no threat to your voice. No need to fight for it. That contrast between their frantic need to be heard and that unshaken calm sends a message. It says, this voice isn't going anywhere. It's the conversational equivalent of a tree holding steady in the wind. And most importantly, it doesn't just command attention, it earns it. But sometimes, silence alone isn't enough. Sometimes the interrupter doesn't back down. They keep talking. They push. They dominate. That's when it's time to pull out the most underrated move in communication, using their name. There's something almost magical about a name. It cuts through the noise like a needle through fabric. No matter how distracted someone is, hearing their name snaps them back. Not yelling it, not whispering it, just firm, clear, and intentional. Picture this. Someone's running over the conversation, charging ahead with their own point, totally ignoring that anyone else was mid-sentence. Just say their name. That's it. Say it strong. Say it twice if needed. No extra emotion. Just that one word. It's like tapping a microphone. Hey, you, back here. And it's not aggressive. It's grounding. It recenters the conversation. Because once someone hears their name, they're naturally going to listen to what comes next. That's your moment. That's when the floor opens up again. It doesn't have to be forceful, just intentional, like tapping someone on the shoulder with your voice. That simple act, saying their name, cuts through whatever momentum they had. It's disarming, but in the best way. Suddenly, they're not just pushing their point anymore. They're pulled into awareness. And awareness is everything. It flips a switch. Their mind goes from broadcast mode to receive mode, almost instantly. And that's when attention shifts. It's not a power move, it's a human move. One that says, "We're still in this conversation together." And what happens next often surprises people. The other person slows down. They pause. They actually listen. Because hearing their name reminds them they're not talking into the void. They're talking with someone. It brings them back to the table instead of sitting on top of it. And once that name is spoken clearly, confidently, without any emotional edge, the room changes. The tension drops. The pace resets. And just like that, the interruption loses its grip. Not because it was silenced, but because it was redirected. Now, once the name has their attention, the next move is calling it what it is. Not rudely, not sarcastically, just plainly. Say something like, "I can't hear you when you talk over me," or "It's not helpful when you talk over me." There's no fluff there, no long explanation, just clear, direct, honest communication. Sometimes people genuinely don't realize they're interrupting. They're excited, passionate, caught up in their thoughts. That doesn't make it okay, but it means naming it helps everyone stay aware, because once something's named, it can't be ignored. And that's really what it comes down to, awareness. Most people aren't waking up thinking, "Today I'm going to bulldoze someone's voice." It's usually subconscious, a reflex, a habit picked up from fast-paced meetings, loud families, or years of not being told otherwise. But when someone finally names it, calmly, clearly, it holds up a mirror. Suddenly, there's a reflection staring back at them, and that moment can be surprisingly effective. It interrupts the interrupter, not with volume, but with clarity. It stops the autopilot response in its tracks, and the message behind the words becomes even louder than the words themselves. It says, "This space matters, this voice matters, and respect is non-negotiable." It doesn't need drama, it doesn't need a spotlight, just the truth delivered without a tremble. And once it's out there, it can't be undone. It lingers, it sticks. Because when someone is calmly told, "You're talking over me," it leaves a mark they carry into the next conversation. And the one after that. That's how change begins. Not with a shout, but with a sentence that holds weight. And if the moment calls for it, something a little more pointed works too. Something like, "Are you interested in what I have to say? Or do you just want to talk over me?" Not hostile, just honest. Measured. Especially if this is someone who makes a habit of dominating conversations. That question can shift their entire posture. Now here's the part that makes it even more real. Because this isn't just theory. This is played out in offices, in meetings, in real-life scenarios, where people felt overlooked until something changed. Take the case of a young associate at a law firm. Brilliant mind, thoughtful ideas. But in meetings, she barely got a word in. Not because she didn't have things to contribute, but because another associate had made it his habit to interrupt her, like clockwork. Every time she began to share something, he'd bulldoze his way in and take over. For a while, she stayed quiet, tried to wait for the perfect moment, but those moments never came. Eventually, she learned a better way. She started doing 3 simple things. First, she kept talking when interrupted, didn't change pace, didn't flinch, just kept her flow steady. That alone made the interrupter's outburst look like background noise. Then she said his name, clear, steady, intentional. And finally, when she had his attention, she said, "David, you're talking over me." That was it. No yelling. No over-explaining. Just clarity. And what happened? He stopped, looked around, realized the room wasn't with him anymore. The group dynamic had shifted, and suddenly, he was the one interrupting, not holding the floor. The apology came quick, and after that, it didn't happen again. What changed wasn't just her voice, it was the whole energy. She showed what calm confidence looked like, and in doing so, reminded everyone else in the room how much power stillness can hold. So for anyone who's ever felt drowned out, talked over, or pushed aside in conversation, the answer isn't to shout louder. It's to get quieter, but not weaker, firmer, more centered. The ones who keep their ground, keep their pace, and use tools like names and clear phrases. They're the ones who guide the room, not by force, but by presence. And when the habit is built, when this approach becomes second nature, the whole experience of speaking shifts. There's no more fear of being interrupted, because even if it happens, the tools are there, not to fight for control, but to own it, without struggle. So the next time someone talks over, don't rise to their noise. Don't wrestle for the mic. Just hold your voice steady, say their name, and let them know, politely, clearly, that the space is shared. It's a subtle move, but it changes everything. And if this kind of clarity resonates, if better communication is something worth building on every day, there's more where this came from. For anyone wanting more tools, more insights, or just more ways to hold space with confidence, consider subscribing, sharing, and sticking around, because the power to transform every conversation, it starts right here.